I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. So welcome to the Business Lockdown, Mr. Jackson White. Jackson is certainly someone who could kick my ass, a martial arts expert, runs the Motivated Martial Arts podcast, which has certainly developed over time, which I'm excited to drill down in today. TMMA.live, which is another martial arts platform, and also business consultant, man of many talents. Welcome to today's show, Jackson.
Hey, thanks, James. Good to be on. Really good to be on.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, mate. So we start in very different periods of guest lives, but you've not always been in business. So take us back to how life looked before business, because we've got a lot to go out in terms of current day and COVID-19. So, what was life like before business, and then eventually what took you into the world of business?
Okay, so predominantly, the main thing I've been really focused on for a number of years, ever since I was a small child, is martial arts. Now, that was my passion. It was a passion of my father's. If you think of a young 4 or 5 year old being towed along everywhere by his dad. His dad was my father was a great athlete, great world-renowned fighter in the art of Taekwondo, and that was in the late 70s, early 80s. And there he excelled. He broke a lot of barriers in terms of the athletic performances, taking Taekwondo into the freestyle martial arts, which was really the precursor for MMA. And I followed him around with glary eyes because I just wanted to be like him. He was the best fighter of his generation, and I wanted to be exactly the same. Life took a bit of a twist for me when I was 16. I was, progressing really well in the martial arts fighting scene as a youngster, with my now still business partner, believe it or not, after nearly 30 odd years, Gavin, who you know. And,
Gavin was our second guest.
Right, okay, there you go then.
So yeah.
And then I think 1990, I was just about to leave school. And I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And one of my uncles said to me, "Have you ever thought of joining the army?" And, I was shocked. It hadn't even occurred to me. I didn't think it was a place for me. I was a bit chip on my shoulder, a bit cheeky, like the physical side. So he said, "Why don't you just come down to the recruiting office with us and have a chat with the guy?" So I went in there, and it was a member of his boxing team when he was serving. He was an ex-member of the Royal Signals. And this guy sat me down, started having a chat, and I was just blown away. He sold it to me on sport. You can do boxing, you can do rugby, you can do football, athletics, swimming, whatever you want to do, you can do it. And I always remember there was a picture of a guy kneeling down with a gun and a big antenna sticking out of his back. And I thought, I want to do that. That looks like something I can do. So off I went and joined the army at the age of 16. I finished school on June the 29th. On the Thursday, finished my last exam. I was on the train to North Yorkshire on the Monday.
Wow! And how did you find your clearly you were advanced in the martial arts world, and it was essentially it was in your blood, clearly in your blood. How did you find that being useful? Early on, or within as a 16 going into the army, because I can relate to myself. At 16, I was destined to go into the Air Force, but I had to wait a year, and then my path changed. So,
Sure.
I had insight into, and I had friends go in, and often the one thing that you find is that 16-year-olds, it's the physical side or the aggression or that side of things that they struggle with. But it seems that might not have been the area.
Issue. So I think one of the challenges for any 16-year-old is breaking that nest, getting away from mum, who does absolutely everything for you. And I was quite fortunate. My dad, he was quite a disciplinarian. So we always made sure that I came home from school, I cleaned my shoes. I always had to do my own ironing of my own bed sheets, had to make the bed in the morning. Although he was never in the military, he had that military mindset, hence probably why he was such a good competitor. So in terms of those respects, I didn't suffer it. What I really had to learn to control was my attitude. Believe it or not, that little chip on my shoulder. Yeah. And it probably took about 6 months of being in the army to realize I'm not going to get very far in this role unless I curve my attitude. And it's just the small things that, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching with children now through the martial arts myself. And it's just the small things where, someone tells you something you don't like, you roll your eyes. It's like, that's it. People think you've got a chip on your shoulder. Like, it's just you expressing yourself. But actually, in those environments, you've got to really temper it down and learn how to control it. Someone's doing a lecture for you. You're tired, so you start yawning. The person that's lecturing thinks that you're boring him. It's just little things like that, cracking a joke when you shouldn't. So it made me mature very, very quickly like that, because I knew if I'd kept on with the same sort of attitude, then I wouldn't have gone very far. Fortuitously, I was selected as a what they call a systems operator, and at the time we were just being introduced into the UK, certainly in the professional services area, such as the AA, mobile phone technology. So the trade that I was actually selected for, once I passed my basic training, was data communications. But again, I didn't have a clue what that was. I said to the recruiting guy, I just want the job with the highest pay and the fastest promotion. He said, well, yeah, you get into there. Little be known to me, that's actually where they needed all their people and resources. So it's quite lucky I fell into that. And that gave me a solid foundation of data communications, which then became mobile phone communications, which then became ICT, information communication technologies. And that's really now, professionally, that's what I do for a living as a business development director for defense companies, looking at data communications, whether it's ICT, C4ISR, communication, command control, information reconnaissance systems. So it's very fortuitous. But doing that at the age of 16 gave me a really good technical grounding.
And how long did you serve? How many years did you serve?
So I served in total for 18 years.
Wow.
Which in terms of adult service,
you certainly earned your stripes. I mean,
yeah. So
wow.
I was being a soldier is like being a professional footballer. You've got to be fit. That goes without saying. So in the battlefield, you can run around. You've got to have a good sense of tactics. You've got to have a good sense of skills. And, eventually after probably about 5 or 6 years, those all started to come together. And I really started excelling. It was something that for me was a great platform. The military, in terms of personal development, is superb. The opportunities to go on courses, both academic courses, referee courses for football, rugby. As I was a physical training instructor. And I think one of the perceptions a lot of people get about the military is you get in there and you do a job. You're a soldier. Well, actually, it's like working for a large corporate. Every 2 to 3 years, you can move around in the organization. And I certainly took advantage of that and moved into lots of different roles. And eventually, I was selected to go on a academic course for a HND in communications management. Normally, you run it over about 2 years. We did it in 9 months, so it's quite intense. But then that started building the academic side, which I've developed today. Just recently finished in a university with a degree in cybersecurity.
So, yeah. It sounds very intense. Well, before we move on to because it feels right that we're going to go into your business journey, or certainly coming out of the army and how that looks. Mm-hmm. Is 2 questions pop to mind. So, what springs to mind when you say a moment, a positive, happy moment that stands out during those 18 years, and a moment that was either a fearful or your most challenging moment? I think they're 2 questions that just popped to mind. And I'm sure the challenge probably is there's too many to think of. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. So I think one of the key moments that stands out in my mind was being deployed on my first operational tour in Afghanistan. Certainly going into what we call a hot zone, helicopters flying, people shooting at you as you're going in, and having to get out and do your job for the first time. So that was certainly, that always sticks in my mind. You prepare and you train and you train and you train some more, but you don't understand those feelings and and you don't know certainly how you're going to react when you come under a contact or into conflict. So are you going to perform? Are you going to let somebody down? Are you going to let yourself down? They were the fears that were going through my head, rather than, am I going to get shot? Am I going to miss something? Is the aircraft going to crash? I can't let my team down. And it's one of those things. I think one of my greatest philosophies in life. Life's all about people. And we build lots of teams, and whether it's a sports team or a work team, and any team environment or organization, it has to be about the people, and certainly in the military, you're driven by that. So it's not about personal fear. It's fear for your colleagues, your brothers in arms, whether you're going to let them down. So that was a standout moment for me. Am I going to let them down? Actually, I should have been worried. Am I going to make it back to see my own kids? But you know, that's just how it goes. And I think a difficult moment, I would say probably one of the most difficult moments.
Not that, and that, what, you don't class that as a difficult moment, Jackson?
No, I see that as a significant moment.
I'm trying to visualize that, and I'm thinking, that must be tough. Like you just can't imagine.
It's so difficult to imagine. Yeah, I think the people that will probably get closer to it that haven't been in any sort of conflict is if you train for one of these white collar boxing matches and you go into the ring. It's that sort of fear. You know, you don't know how you're going to perform. You just got to get in and do it. It's blind. You don't know, regardless of the training. And I think a real challenging moment was actually making the decision to leave the armed forces. So normally your term is 22 years as a non-commissioned officer, and then the ability to move on further up to the age of 55. Great pension, great career path. I made the decision to leave after 18 years of service. Purely because I'd achieved everything that I wanted to achieve as a non-commissioned officer. I ended up as a warrant officer class 1, and it was I'm doing really well. You know, I more than likely would have been commissioned, and then maybe up to a lieutenant colonel, like a lot of my colleagues are now. And to get out early was difficult because but in my mind I thought, I need a new challenge. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I probably ran out to about 8 lives in various conflicts, and I'm fed up. I had a young family that I needed more stability for, so I made that decision to. It probably took me a good 3 or 4 months to make that final decision to get out, and start again. Having been in terms of life, been well looked after by the armed forces. I was being thrown out into the big wide world on my own with a young family, so I had to make that decision, and that was extremely difficult to make.
And how was that? How was that transition? What did that look like? You took 3 or 4 months to make the decision, and then how was that transition coming out of it? It must be so alien after 18 years. I mean, to go from 16, where you're literally a boy, aren't you? And you've gone from
you're a child.
To say you've gone from a boy to a man would be an understatement, and then that's all you've known really coming into adulthood, to go into the big wide world. I mean, how was that transition for you? Was it very strange?
Very fortuitously for me.
Did you grab hold of it?
Yeah, so very fortuitously, the defence or the military, they give you a good, what they call a resettlement package. So that's well supported. However, the last organisations in the MOD that I supported, you're pretty much, although you're part of the military, you're there to think for yourself. So I had my own house, had my own friends, I had my hobbies outside of the military, because that's what's encouraged. So I didn't find the transition too difficult. So I was quite lucky, and I already had pre-planned. I'm a planner. I like to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. It's a common thing I always talk to my teams about now. You can have the greatest planning process. As soon as you hit the go button, be prepared for everything to go wrong and have a plan B and C. So no plan survives first contact is a good military saying. So I had the biggest concern was financial stability for my family. We already had a house, excuse me. So it was about making sure I had the right next career path for me in the next role. So I was very lucky to meet a chap, when I was out in Iraq, who was installing some equipment for us. And I got back in touch with him. I went down and had a chat with him. We agreed a contract that I could come and work for him. With a good stable wage. Being in the army, you have a stable wage. It's paid every end of every month without fail, whether you work 365 days a year or you work 1 day of the year. Obviously, that's slightly different as a civilian. But I'll talk more about that later. You're probably no more secure as a civilian now. So that was really good. It fitted really well. It was a young fledgling company. I was a quite early entry. I think I was about the 30th employee. And I moved into that role, and it went really well.
And how long were you with that company for? And what was your progression path?
So I came in originally to support the organisation with their equipment. They designed, developed, and manufactured equipment for surveillance platforms which were being used in various operational zones around the world. So my job was to go in there and support those products. So rather than just being delivered to the customer, make sure there was training, make sure there was first line repair, second line repair, support. And I managed to do that, grew quite a big team in the customer support department for the organization as it grew. And then I was invited to, I spent a lot of the time, strangely enough, in the Middle East and North Africa, supporting our customers. And I find myself getting dragged in from a customer support side, having conversations with customers and developing great relationships and actually doing more selling than the actual business development manager stroke sales manager was doing. So I was invited to take on that mantle for the North of Africa and the Middle East. And I became a business development manager stroke sales manager, which was actually quite a baptism of fire. And I had a bit of patter. I knew the capability technically and could talk my way around it, but commercially, it was a bit of a challenge at first. Understanding.
And I imagine being in that part of the world as well didn't feel alien to you. In fact, I imagine it felt more at home in a number of ways.
In a
so
way,
you had
but
that going for you as well.
But I was, the organisations I was dealing with over there were foreign militaries, foreign law enforcement agencies. So although having had that operational experience gave me a bit of credibility, and I knew what I was talking about when we were talking about the application. But then I had to learn very quickly the commercial side of things, how complex sales are won. There's numerous stakeholders, committees, and it's understanding the challenges from a procurement officer to an operational officer or department to the key budget holders. So there was a huge gap in my knowledge there. So I continued in that job, I think, for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and it became very, very apparent as I was being involved in some of these deals that we were involved in are £3 or £4 million deals of our equipment. So they're complex. It dawned on me very early that I didn't have the skill set and I needed to learn that skill set. And I didn't feel that organization was in a position to teach me because it was a small organization. So I then opted to leave. It was, again, another difficult decision because I felt quite loyal to the organization and moved to a larger corporate where I could get involved in some large corporate structure and understand, project management and all those good processes that you'd expect from a larger organization.
Mm-hmm. How long did that journey take you? Because I can't wait to find out what was the itch that needed to be scratched in order to go into business, or was it purely right time, right place?
Yeah, sure. So
an opportunity.
So in a large organisation, again, I learned very quickly the processes, following things like the Shipley process, marketing process, all these other things. Quite successful there. And then actually 2.5 years of being in that role, I thought actually there's not too much to this after all. It's about your networks and your other skills. But from my mindset, I was missing something, but actually it wasn't really missing. I probably could have done a couple of podcasts and found out the answers if podcasts were around in those days, or a few good audio books. But it was a good experience. It widened my network, certainly within the defence sector. And then I was headhunted for a role in a company called GTAC, if I can say that live. So we're looking at rugged mobile computers, again, in the defence space. Went there and again became quite successful within the organisation, again, through my network, understanding, taking a really small organisation now. I think we were probably only doing maybe 500k a year as an organisation and taking that up to a £16 million a year business. My role within that was in the defence sector for the first 2.5 years. And then the second 2.5 years, I was the business development director, looking after business development and sales for the UK and Nordics, and then helping take that organisation to £16 million.
Wow! So to say that there's some weight on your shoulders, a chunk of responsibility would be an understatement. So why go into the crazy, uncertain world of business then, Jackson? If because it seems your pathway, and I'm sure that there's of course a lot more to it, but in terms of career development, it seems you've made those key decisions and they've worked out for the best, and you've progressed forward, in a really positive way. So
yeah.
Why on earth would you jump into the world of business
on your own? Because I think working for somebody else, you don't really know what pressure is, do you? We may have had this discussion ourselves. You can always fall back to the company. Yeah, and worst case scenario, you'll get the sack. But then, the company could go under. Anything could happen when you're working for someone else. Of course, you never want that to happen. I think that the next challenge is for me, can I do it on my own? Do I have that skill set? I can do it for another company, but you've always got that safety blanket, I suppose the word is, of an organization, where when you're doing it for yourself and you've got to generate your own income, you've got to rely on your own network, and you've got to continue to be motivated. I applied all those skills, and somebody else, I think, has reaped the rewards for that. Yeah, I've been financially remunerated, which is great, but actually it's for somebody else. The challenge for me now is to do it for me as an individual, not so much for the finances, but for the ability to say that I can grow my own organization. And it's not without challenges, as I'm sure you know.
Well, how much of that do you think was at play, that if you didn't go for it, and you'd always look back wondering what if, was that ever at play? Is that in your makeup? Yeah,
no, most definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's I'm very seize the day. If I see an opportunity, you've got to go for it. And in my mindset, if you've got those seeds of doubt, that itch, as you put it, either you've got to scratch it or you've just got to put up and do what you want. I'm not one to settle for the norm. The more someone will say to me, you can't do that. Well, actually, that's just a red rag to a bull. Off I'll go, and I'll prove them wrong. And I've done that all my career. I remember as an early man a young man in the military, someone said to me, I said, I want to do X, I want to do Y, and I want to do Z or Z. And he went, no, you'll never do that. Just slow down. A year later, I'd achieved all of that, and he's still there scratching himself, reading his Sun newspaper. So, and that's just an example of who I am. I learned to play rugby to quite a high level. I'd never picked up a rugby ball until I was 22. If I'd have been a young man, I probably would have, just eked into the professional area if I'd had that skill set from an early age. Martial arts, so the Taekwondo, when I joined the forces, it wasn't a recognised sport, so I had to pick up rugby, had to pick up athletics. When I left the forces when I was 32, I took my kids to my father's Taekwondo class and picked it back up. And before I knew it, I was back in the Great Britain team at the age of 34. I was the oldest there by at least 10 years. People said, you'll never get back into the team. Well, actually, that was my ambition. I trained twice as hard as everybody. I trained twice as long. After sessions, I would stay on and do extra stretching. And yeah, I got back into the team, ended up becoming a double world champion, fought with the England team and the Great Britain team around the world on numerous occasions. I was almost like I was the old man of the team, because most of my teammates, I think the oldest was probably about 28. And then I retired at the age of 42, 44, 42, I can't remember. But,
wow.
Can I do it? I don't know, but I'm going to give it a bloody good try. I think that's
yeah. Give it a go. It's better to fail, right? Better to fail having given it a go than not try at all. Yeah, not try.
So, and is it failure? I don't really think it's failure, because if you take those lessons from it, the first couple of times I got in the ring in the Taekwondo and in the kickboxing, I wasn't successful, but I learned from that. What do I need to do? Okay, I need to be a little bit sharper. I need to be a bit quicker on my toes. Probably need to have a better repertoire of techniques. So it's a learning process. I've been running my Taekwondo schools now, probably for 4 or 5 years professionally, and they're growing. It's marketing. Does a certain type of marketing work? No, I don't know. I've never tried it. I can ask people. I can take advice. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, find out why it hasn't worked. Tweak it, and then eventually, and just little things like that. You've got to be prepared to have a go, but also make sure if you do fail, I don't see it as a failure, I see it as a lesson. And if you learn from that lesson, then you can move forward and continue to grow.
I love that, and I think that takes us nicely on. You talk about your Taekwondo academies and schools, and then you touched on marketing. Let's talk about your podcast, because when it comes to marketing, we're on a podcast now on our platform. I remember speaking with Gav about a year ago now, and he was talking about your podcast, and at the time he was new to it and overcritical, maybe in an excessive amount of editing and wondering what people would want from it, and I know that it's very different now, but give our audience insight into the podcast, because it went crazy quickly, right? In terms of
most definitely.
Yes, you got an audience.
So I think, yeah, Gavin approached me. I think he spoke to one of our mutual friends and said, Jackson, we need to do a podcast. And I'd listened to one or two. I hadn't really got into them. And he said, no, this is definitely the way to go. I was a little bit skeptical. I said, well, to be honest, Gavin, who wants to listen to us? What do we know? Okay, so we've been in martial arts all our lives. You probably know most of the martial artists in Great Britain, or certainly the prominent ones. From traditional martial arts, not so much on the MMA side, but certainly traditional martial arts, kung fu, taekwondo, karate, a bit of kickboxing, that type of thing. So we've got good relationships with a lot of those people. And I just thought, I didn't. It's one of those things. I was like, well, let's give it a try. It's a new medium. We sat down for the first day. We recorded our first episode, and at the time I was doing the editing. And I spent a good 2 hours editing our voices, the particularly not so much me because I'm used to speaking in public, but my partner Gavin, the the ahs, and I've got a clip. Probably shouldn't say this. He might not listen to this podcast. Well, I've got his best bits, and it's an hour's worth of him going You know what I mean? But again, it's a skill set, isn't it? I've been on presentation courses where you learn not to put the ums in or the ahs and take the pauses and all those good things. But for someone that skill's new. I remember in the early days we used to just get 5 or 6 people lined up and take a day and just do them all. And we'd be worrying and we'd be planning and we'd be researching and we'd be trying to put the questions down in a methodical order. And it was difficult. I remember Gavin after the first one, we did it down in Coventry here, and he drove home back up to where he lives up north. He said, I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm mentally exhausted. And I was like, well, I couldn't understand why, because to me it was interviewing and talking to someone like a business conversation. But for him, who hadn't been doing that for probably 5 or 6 years, I could see, it's learning a new skill set, retraining yourself. And I think at the very start, we were very critical of ourselves. I hate my own voice. I don't like listening to my own voice back at all. So I tend not to listen to the podcast only once when they were being edited. And even now, I don't do that now. We've got someone that does that for us. But I was always conscious of that. But you have to come to accept it. So now it is what it is. I can listen to them now, begrudgingly. If my partner's got one on in the car. And you just grow with it, and it becomes natural. And to the extent now, we tend to do it on the fly. If we can get hold of someone, we've got an hour spare, we'll just throw them in the diary. And particularly over COVID, it's been great, hasn't it? There's no excuse. Everybody's available.
Majority of people who know how to use Zoom as well.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
In terms of, I watched a seminar recently, and they said before COVID-19, the global customer base in terms of size, if you think of it as New York, and since COVID-19, it's the population of the USA. So that's how much the users and the audience of using Zoom has grown. So it is even that is an excuse, because you'll say, do you know how to use Zoom now? And most people are using it on a daily basis with their teams, or connecting with family, or doing family quizzes. So
it's a household tool, isn't it? Of course. Other live streaming platforms are available.
Absolutely, we will come to that. I like that. We will come to that. So, from zero of clearly putting too much work, too much structure, overthinking, over planning, to it becoming a natural process, and certainly having more confidence. When did you feel that you were in your stride? Was that 3 months in? And if so, when they said you were in your stride, what did that look like?
What did the stride? So probably, I think about 6 months in. So every month or every 2 months. In fact, it was every 2 months we used to book those in. So we weren't doing it on a frequent basis. I think just before Christmas, I think we were getting into that flow because we were finding people difficult to get hold of. So we were doing a lot more Zoom interviews like this. Excuse me. And the planning became less because I was finding I just started a new role in an organization. So there was a lot of learning, bringing lots of different smaller subunits together. So my time was really precious at the time. Plus we were doing the TMMA in terms of the consultancy business, which we were setting up for martial arts. So the podcasting, it was all on the hoof. So I didn't have time to rehearse. Gavin didn't have time. It was quite a busy period. We were picking up a partner from the US, which we were in the negotiations with. So time was very precious. So we just tended not to plan, but we didn't feel like we needed to plan as much. I think that was probably about 6 months in. And then certainly over the COVID period, it's we get a WhatsApp message or a Facebook Messenger message. Oh, I'm free this afternoon. I'll check with Gav. Are you free? And off we'd go, and we just get straight into it. And it's so natural now. We don't even think about it. So I think probably 6 months.
Right, and give us a bit of insight into the kind of people you interview and some of the, because the level of people who've approached you as well has been amazing.
So we started off, we wanted to really provide a platform for non-MMA martial artists. Of course, there's a bit of crossover. So, UFC fighters or Bellator, they get quite a lot of high-profile exposure now, don't they? Which is great. But not every martial artist is an MMA fighter. So we wanted to give a platform for what we call more traditional martial arts, from the Kung Fu, the Taekwondo, the kickboxing, even judo, jiu-jitsu. And just give them a platform. So first one, obviously, we did our own bit of an introduction to why we're doing it and a bit of our backstory, of course. And then we picked on my father, because a lot of people see him now as an older man in the martial arts. Well, they don't, especially a young generation, they don't know what he did. And he's got some good stories to tell. We then looked at some of the head of the Taekwondo Association of Great Britain. And then we just started, contacting some of these great fighters from yesterday, with a nice mix of fighters and martial artists from today. For example, we've had Neil Adams on there, the world champion and Olympic champion. We've had again, we try and put a bit of diversity in there sometimes, where we really want sports people with inspirational stories. So we had a chap called Mark Perkins, who was the captain of the Invictus Games. That was through one of my military links. I served with Mark. And it's about inspiring stories, and there's common themes. It's about failure, the adversities and the triumphs, and the heartaches and the successes. And I think that as a human story in 30 minutes or 40 minutes, it can be very inspiring. It can be very motivational, and of course, the motivated martial artist. That's what we're all about: motivating people. I'm not going to give the precursor of our introduction. It sounds a bit cheesy saying it out loud, but it is. It's about inspiring people in their everyday lives. When you're fed up coming home from work and you're thinking about that new career, or you've got to go to the gym, you put our podcast on for 30 minutes and listen to somebody that's achieved so much, and they've sat in that car on that commute, or they've not felt like going to the gym. They've wanted to quit, or they've failed and failed and failed before they've hit any sort of achievement. And that's what it's all about, just getting that inspirational story out to motivate you.
That's awesome. And of course, that's the benefit to the audience. But how do you and Gav, what impact does it have on you guys?
So it's grown us in the martial arts industry, without a doubt. And on the back of that, so we run successful martial arts clubs ourselves. And we do that through digitization. And really modernizing the club, so systemizing and digitization, and that's something I've done in a previous role within the defense industry. So we've taken that knowledge, we've laid that template down in our martial arts clubs, and it's successful. So actually, we want to help other people with that. The Motivated Martial Artist podcast, or TMMA as it's referred to now, gives us that audience to engage with and talk to about this. And then, go into martial arts school owners and talk about digitizations and systemizing their schools for efficiency, so they can get down to do what they want to do best, which is teaching. They don't want to be bookkeeping, collecting fees, and all the burden of administration. Actually, today, you don't need to do that. You can digitize everything. So we go in and support that. That's grown. As you know, during the lockdown, very, very quickly, we spun up a platform for live video conferencing, on-demand videos, and also class scheduling for martial arts instructors, because clubs were closed down, so we need to do that. That's TMMA.live, and that's becoming very successful. And what it's done, it's really grown the Motivated Martial Artist brand, or TMMA, which we now refer to as, into different areas. So we've got the TMMA Consulting, we've got the TMMA Live, we've got TMMA Academy, which is a spin-off from the TMMA Live piece. So it's really we're starting to see a lot of momentum in the martial arts industry with our products and services.
That's awesome, and it's great to hear that you've drilled down on your expertise in your niche, which is martial arts, but then you're building and developing that, and the strands off and bringing. But certainly it's clear your background of expertise in a digital data world. Just give us a little bit of insight with TMMA.live, Jackson, because it came around because of COVID.
Sure.
And there's been many people, variety of stories of people attacking the day, looking at the opportunities out there, having no option but to pivot and adapt, and generate new ideas when essentially income streams stop. What's that journey been like? I mean, because I know it's been challenging, but I also know there's been an immense amount of drive behind that with clear vision. What's that journey kind of looked like in terms of, because I imagine what you've done here is you've been building this podcast, which at the start you were like, well, let's just do that, and then within no time it's gone crazy. Your network has grown immensely, and then all of a sudden COVID hits. You've got this network. You've got you're trusted in the community. How much value did that podcasting journey and growth have on your new setup on TMMA.live during COVID?
It was very, so what I'm looking for, it was critical, because from the podcast, we had that platform. People knew us from the podcast, and they're listening to us in their car. It's almost a trusted voice. And a lot of the people that we podcast to, the instructors, the practitioners, we saw there was a problem, because martial arts clubs were just boom, gone straight away. Whether you're teaching in your own dojan, when the gym's closed, martial arts clubs closed. Whether you're teaching in a school, when the school's closed, the martial arts clubs closed. So there was a real need. So within the martial arts community, you could see on social media, what am I going to do? I've lost my clubs. So we saw there was a problem. There was more than a problem. There was a need to us for what we thought was to support the instructors. So we set up a TMMA Live coffee morning to find out what challenges they've got. Originally, we started using Zoom because that's what Gavin and I were familiar with. But actually, we thought, there's an opportunity to do more here. Bring martial arts to more people, and it doesn't have to be geographically ring-fenced, because through the internet you can go global. We wanted to bring the best martial artists to everybody, whilst giving the instructors a platform to be able to reach out to their respective customers. So that was the drive behind it. The challenges. So we'd never built a piece of software before, is the honest answer. So we had to learn very, very quick. The aim was to get the minimum viable product out, and I think we did that in 3 weeks. Minimum viable product. Yourself and Pink, giving us the branding and the brand development, which was fantastic, and which has again helped us morph with just the brand development from TMMA.live to the brand development of TMMA in totality. So there were lots of different facets where we were calling on different parts of expertise. So obviously yourselves in the marketing and branding space, myself with the technical side. What's the architecture of the platform going to look like? Who's going to pull what together? And then the marketing and the sales side of it, bringing in the audiences and the strategies that we've used to do that. And yeah, to get it all together in 3 weeks, it was long nights, if I recall. Lots of Zoom time.
And I do know from working with you in the early days of that was you not only got the instructor side where overnight it stopped, income stream revenue stopped, but you've got all of these kids who then can't, and you've not only got all these kids who then can't take classes, but you've got parents who are juggling homeschooling and business and work-life balance with kids with excess amount of energy now and a lack of discipline. So it just seems, and I do know, it seems like kind of a perfect fit. What does that look like now today, Jackson? And do you see it continuing strength by strength? Because I imagine I'm not aware at the moment. Are classes, physical classes now starting up, or they're still not taking place?
Current time today, we're teaching outdoors, which in the UK is inherent with the weather. So you may get in a good session on outdoors. If not, you fall back onto the TMMA platform, which works really, really well. We're going back in from Friday into full-time classes, but again, it's having that preparation to knowing your area could be locked down. An outbreak in your area, you're going to be locked down. You're going to have that backup platform. So I think what it gives now for the instructors is that reassurance. The students are familiar with it, the system, how it works, the protocols. It's slightly different being taught online, as you know. You don't get that human feel. So you got the instructors have to adapt, and that's a huge journey which we've mentored a number of instructors on how to adapt to teach in front of the camera. But also it's a change for the student as well. So, but people are prepared now if they go back down into a lockdown or an isolated lockdown, that they can pull out their system and carry on running. And what we've seen, a number of the instructors that we talk to, they're actually looking at a mix, because where they're traveling sometimes 30, 40 minutes to a location, well, actually, and they're doing that 5 nights a week, they could actually do a virtual class one night of the week, just to reduce their overheads of premises. And also what it gives them doing the virtual classes, it gives them a wider audience. They're not geographically restrained. And I think that's one of the big things. So it's something that we've been pushing really hard for the instructors. We've got some quality instructors on there. They're now going out to a global audience. And, from when we're looking at our Google Analytics, we are literally global, So I think that is one of the benefits, giving the instructors that wider exposure. And certainly for students, if you go on holiday, you can still pick up on the on-demand library, or you can pick up a live class. You can do it on the beach, you can do it in your hotel room, it doesn't matter. So it's about giving the students that flexibility, which the modern lifestyle which we're in today demands.
That's awesome. And look, if you had a crystal ball, well, essentially, what is the goal? If you had a crystal ball and it was a positive vision, how do you see that? What's the kind of, where are you striving to achieve with that? What's the moment when you and Gav can sit down and look at each other and think, this is it now? What's that look like?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that changes every milestone you hit. We're all for setting our goals high, but they have to be realistic. We look back in October. Yeah, we look back at in the start of COVID at where we are. We like to revisit our strategy so we can tweak and adjust. And as you say, pivot if we need to. And COVID was a great example of that. We pivoted very, very quickly, met a market demand, and then that opened up numerous doors for us. So we looked in March at our notepad from when we started up, and it was set a meeting with company X and we want to become their partners. Well, we had that contract signed in January, 1st of January, it was signed and done and dusted. Now I think we've quadrupled the number of customers for that particular product called Skills, which is a child development program, which uses martial arts as a platform for delivery. That's part of our consultancy business. Now we're really driving the TMMA to grow the TMMA. The aim is to get up to at least 5,000 students on there. We've hit the instructor base, so we're not really taking on any new instructors now. We're going to work with the ones that we have. But from the TMMA.live, we now have TMMA Academy, where we've had a number of instructors that have been asking us, we love the concept or the architecture of TMMA.live. Can we reduce it so it's just for my school? I want my own online capability. So we've tweaked the product, and now we're delivering that to a number of instructors as well. So we see a big push for that, which incidentally automatically interfaces, or there's protocols that can interface directly into TMMA.live as well. So if you're recording a class, you can show that on TMMA.live, or you can keep it isolated in your own academy. So it's a spin-off product, which is great. And we've got plans for further development of the software. But I think in terms of what's the wow moment, I think the wow moment is when we're doing more podcasts globally, and we can get out to Central Asia, interview a few people. We can jump on a plane. We can go to Central America, interview a few people. Obviously put on hold at the moment with COVID, but go around to some of the national tournaments, not just in Taekwondo, but in different martial arts as we do already, but do that globally, knowing that the software business is working fine and we're generating and people are jumping on that. The academies are working well, and it's to have, I suppose, the ability to work anywhere in the world, rather than being stuck to a corporate desk or a corporate home now, as most people are sitting on their live streaming platforms working from home, aren't they? But it's to have that flexibility and to be able to fund that lifestyle, to be able to move around and interview and enjoy the martial arts scene and and continue to advise and support people and see people with the success in their clubs that myself and Gavin have enjoyed over the last 5 years.
That's awesome, man, and I have every confidence in the fact that it's not that it's not going to happen. It's just a case of timing and when, really. I fully believe that's the case for you guys. Well, before we wrap up, I've got one question.
Sure.
Now, if I was in business with a mate and both of us were martial arts experts, I'd imagine that there would have been a couple of scrapes and scraps, officially or unofficially. Now, you can't tell me that hasn't happened and that you haven't kept count. So,
okay.
Now, and if that's not the case, I think I'll certainly be wondering why. But when it comes to you and Gav, have you fought competitive? Have you fought in the competitive arena together against each other?
Yes. So when we were kids, so it started when we were kids. So Gavin, when he was 15 and I was 15, Gavin had the strength of a 21-year-old. He was one of those kids who grew massively and just matured. That's probably why he was bold at the time he was 25, to be fair. But so I was a lot smaller frame, but Gavin was a blunt instrument. He could kick, and he could kick adults over. So we often fought, but I tactically outdid him, and we were just tit for tat all the time. And then when we both got back into martial arts, Gavin got back into the ring, and I think I only fought him once, and I was being quite nice, and he kicked me in the groin, and I was fuming. I couldn't believe it. Dirty. It's typical Gavin, to be fair. And he kicked me in the groin, and I was like, bloody hell. So I just lined him up with a front hand ridge hand, and I broke his nose. On purpose, but it's on the mat. There's no friends on you on the mat. I hasten to add. I patted him on the back when we came off, and I picked him up from hospital.
Like a good friend should, right?
Of course, yeah. And we don't hold grudges about it. And I think he's got one picture of me, which he sends me at least once a year, with him punching me in the face, and that was just before I actually ridge-handed him in the nose. So yeah.
That's awesome.
You know what? We've known each other since we were, 8 years old. So we don't actually fall out. We have disagreements, and we fall out. We sort with each other for about an hour, then we'll pick the phone back up and say, right, okay, let's have a rethink. We have heated discussions, but generally, we generally don't fall out. We know when we're getting tired because we get narky with each other. I suppose it's like an old husband and wife scenario. And he's definitely the wife, by the way. But we don't fall out. We total trust. We have the same values. We've grown up with the same values. And, even though we had probably a 15-year break from each other, we've picked that up right from where we've left off. And if anything, it's grown stronger.
That's incredible. I was speaking with a mate of mine, Phil Benson, on last episode, and he was in business partnership with one of his good mates for over 10 years. And, I made the point of, business partnership for 10 years, you could class as 30, 40 plus years in terms of a normal friendship. Certainly when it comes to time spent with each other, levels of pressure and stress coming together. So, you can never downplay that when it comes into business. And for anybody who thinks that it's always kind of like it's plain sailing, I think it's healthy to have those disagreements.
I think if you keep things bubbling and boiling in, when we have this heated debate, I like to call it. So if it was with a wife, I'm sure it'd be an argument. But when we have these heated conversations, as long as we keep that communication open, I think that's the key thing, communicating. And you've got some solid reasons why. And he phones me up sometimes. I've got a great idea. Oh yeah, I'm the man that dampens all these great ideas. I roll my eyes and go on then. And then after about the first 30 seconds, I either say, that's a great idea, or shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, that's rubbish. And that's how blunt we can be, and he's vice versa.
But I imagine that, he knows that, so he values that.
Correct.
The worst thing is that you kind of sugarcoat it when you actually, it's so important to be transparent, certainly in a business partnership, in a friendship. I mean, I think there's a lot of value if somebody says, right, I need your help on this, but I also want to know what your thoughts. I think there's a lot of value because, with saying, I think you're an idiot, but I'll help you anyway, because I'm here for you.
I think you're an idiot, and these are the reasons why. But if you still want to go for it, then of course you've got my support. And if you prove me wrong, I'll eat the humble pie. And that's one thing, I suppose, is being able to admit when you're wrong. with your business partner, because sometimes you don't always see the picture, you don't understand what's being communicated to you. You have those blockers, don't you? Everybody has it in every walk of life. But if you can, hold your hand up and say, actually, I didn't get it then, I get it now, my apologies, and then you move on. You can't let things fester. You've got to get everything out in the open pretty quickly. If you start letting things fester, it starts getting more gravitas, and it gets bigger. It's like a rolling stone, isn't it? And it gets bigger and bigger, and before you know it, you're in a world of hurt, and everything's a problem.
On that note, where can people find you, mate? Where can people find you?
So
Social hooks, your website?
Okay, website. So we're trained Taekwondo schools. So anyone that's looking to do any child development for their youngsters or Taekwondo martial art. We're the Motivated Martial Artists podcast, or TMMA, on Facebook. And yeah, that's pretty much where we are. And from there, you'll see all our different platforms. So tmma.media as well. You'll see all our different offerings. We've got our 50 best interviews coming out, ready for Christmas. So that's our first book, volume 1. So that'll be worth a listen to. Find the secrets of the 50 of the best UK martial artists. And Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those good platforms. We're not on TikTok.
All those good platforms.
I'm still validating the security implications of that.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've really enjoyed
Thanks for having me on, James. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been awesome, man. And I'm sure, I don't have to wish you every success, because I'm just confident that it will come your guys' way. You're an incredible person, and as a partnership as well. So, and no doubt we'll have you both. Let's get you both on together on the show.
We can talk about that ridge hand, can't we?
Indeed.
I'm sure he's got a different story.
Jackson White, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.